From my own experience and from what I observe, the build-up of pressure which is put on young people today to fit into an academic or an economic frame begins very early on. So often it can begin really into the childhood, and it may be based on parental insights, but also through the education system. And there's very high demands on children to perform in a certain way that is expected. And often I believe that young adults choose to take a gap year because they are really looking to themselves. What are my values? Who am I in the world? And what is the world? So there is a direct relationship between the microcosm, the I am, and then the macrocosm of what is within the world, what is within the universe, which I can intimately relate to. Because I think when there is a lot of pressure to perform or to choose a subject or a vocation in life, not only does it create anxiety and stress, but also there is a fear in young people that they will choose to do something which they may not be able to continue with, or they are afraid to make a choice because what if they make the wrong choice? So how best to support yourself than to take the time to really get to know yourself and what your capacities are. A lot of students or a lot of young people choose to travel because there's a lot of the world that they have not seen. So how can you make a choice in your little bubble, in your little area or your country, when actually, you know, there is this huge global space? And so a lot of students choose to actually physically go and travel and to discover themselves that way. Here, the students have decided to make their journey. It's still a journey, it's still a travel, but it's an internal travel. So they are making their connection to the world, not through physically going, but through understanding themselves more deeply. When I took my master's, I studied social sculpture, and part of that course was looking at a rucksack of questions that we carry with us. And I'm going to go further into it, because if you think about a gap year, you reach 17, 18 and you take a year off, and you take your rucksack, you pack everything into your rucksack and you leave. A lot of the time. So this idea of taking what is important with you when you leave home is a process that those that decide to take a gap year are looking at. And I talked earlier about awareness and consciousness. So there is a want to develop in a way, in a certain way, and there is this rucksack of questions, but also a rucksack of burden. It's heavy. And where do you go with it? And what is in it? And how does it help you? And how does it not? And also, if it's really heavy, how do you let go of the things you don't need? And so that you are defining what is necessary. And so this period of leaving home and discovering yourself, in terms of traveling, it's about distance. But in terms of coming on a study, it's about conscious awareness. You are really going into your own development. And that is one of the things the Vrije Hogeschool highlights specifically, is we are going to go on that awareness journey, that consciousness journey, to find out what are those necessary things in your rucksack that you need to keep, that are yours. Often what I see is they come with a lot of emotional discoveries. So they discover things about themselves, which is their own healing process, but it also affects the group. So as a teacher or as a facilitator, my question is, how do I not only offer the tools to develop them in terms of an educational sense, but how do I support and hold the group as well as the individual? And the individuals each bring their own energies and their own emotions and their own processes to the group, which shapes the group. So if one student is having difficulty, it also affects the group. So for myself as a teacher, how to hold that space correctly so that they can still continue with their individual journeys without affecting each other to a point where it can become too much. So this is part of my program, is I take them and we do things that are halfway through a course, I'm like, boom, that's it. We're going to go and we're going to do something physical, because they don't bond as a group. They don't come out of themselves as individuals. Taking them out of their comfort zone, pushing them, and if they don't do it physically, you know, then you can't just have a theoretical drive or a conceptual drive. You have to have a physical drive. These conversations come up. I'm not ready yet to choose something. How am I supposed to know? I don't want to fit into something. Why should I be boxed? And I think there is a lot of stress that they are becoming more and more aware of, for sure. Because they're so complacent, and the TV and the social media, and it's phenomenal. The poor, they have the toughest time. I was lucky enough that I'm the generation just before all of that, so I didn't have it. But my God, these students that are coming up now in this generation that's arriving, to get into practical thinking and to be able to employ that in practical doing, that is going to be their biggest challenge. Yeah, for sure. Well, it's really an individual thing. So I think you have to ask it in terms of consciousness and awareness. And often I think students who say, I want to develop myself, there is an early awareness. And perhaps some students or people who continue without a gap year, may not reach that level of awareness in the same way until later, potentially. Or perhaps they reached it earlier and they already made that decision that this was the path they were going to take. But I think the gap year, I mean, if you think of the terms a gap year, and you think of a gap, you know, is it a year of nothingness, or is it an unknown space where something can develop? And I think this is about consciousness and awareness. And often students that choose a gap year are on some level of personal development. It's a process, and what's really wonderful, I think, here is that it's transparent. So if a student has a problem with smoking dope or weed, hey, it's looked at, and you know, you're there and you're having the conversation with them. Okay, how can we get you off that, and how can we put into place a structure that allows you, out of your own motivation, to access and manifest your willpower? And I think this is the main problem. If they want to go and get a job or go to university and they're going, it's too stressful, is it purely because they don't know how to get up on time? And so how do you educate students to really access their willpower, and how do you put that willpower into the thinking? And some of the students have the willpower in the thinking, but they then cannot break it down and put it back into their body. And this is what I think these addictions are. People become addicted to things because it's like an escapism, because they have not, as younger children, had the ability to develop simple, practical, physical tasks. Like how to observe something and do it to, not perfection, but enough to that they believe that they've achieved that thing. And that is where the stress of achievement comes in. The stress to be able to achieve. What we want to do as an educational system is to develop people to go, I can achieve that and more, let's do it. And unfortunately, the educational system doesn't do that. And I think, yeah, we see a lot of those types of students as well. I mean, for me, I really get like, come on. But it's interesting as well as a teacher or as a facilitator is, okay, how do we gently support them in a holistic sense to be able to access their willpower?